Now, this is what I believe every guy who's in a contract situation should do. Some people think you have more leverage if you stay away. I think you have more leverage if you do this.
You're tuned in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, guiding your gridiron journey, none other than your host, former NFL lineman, Ross Tucker.
Oh, yeah, it is. But it's not just any Ross Tucker Football Podcast. It is a Wisdom Wednesday, and there's a lot to get to. I tweeted, I think it was Sunday, at Ross Tucker NFL, that there would be more news this week than the last 2 months combined. I think we've already hit that. I mean, just with what happened yesterday, I think we've already passed that. We'll get to all of the news in a little bit, because that's really what we are here, right? You're going to get, for the most part, a pretty cool interview every day on the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, which will be daily starting week 1 of the NFL season. We're still 3 times a week until that point. But you're also going to know exactly what's going on around the NFL at all times in 25 minutes or less. Pretty good deal, right? Good deal? Let's do it. So speaking of let's do it, before we get to Steve Palazzolo from Pro Football Focus, who does an awesome job with trends from last season to look for going into this season from a schematic standpoint, which I absolutely love. And yes, we will have Greg Cosell tomorrow. I should note that we're going to give out some more free entries into the next Best Ball Draft with me and Joe Dolan on today's Fantasy Feast podcast. So take advantage of any of the sponsors that you hear on any of the shows, or if you just click the link when we post the show on social media, one of the options is to go to the sponsor page on rosstucker.com, and you're golden. It gives you a discount for all these different companies, their services, their products. See which one you need or want, whatever, and then forward it to me and say, I want to get in on the best ball, or I want the signed autograph, or I want you to answer my question, or I want you to answer my question on Even Money Podcast, whatever you want. You can do any of those things, which is pretty cool. Ross at rosstucker.com. We actually have a new patron today, which is great. Jonathan Kirkland, welcome to the family. Not only do you get that shout out, Jonathan, but now you're part of our private Tuckheads Slack group, which is just a really cool community where we all hang out with each other, and you get to see all of the bets on the Even Money Podcast as the season comes along, which is, I think, why a lot of people do it. At any rate, it's Big Show time.
The Big Show.
Absolutely love anytime I can get my guy Steve Palazzolo on the show here on the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. You come on, it's funny, I said the same thing when I was interviewing Sam Munson. I feel like I have you guys once a year in the off season to kind of just get like some of your takeaways or thoughts from the season that was. You can, of course, check out Steve on social media at PFF_Steve. I'm going to give you a blank slate. You might say the same thing that Sam said when I spoke with him right before you and I are talking here. But biggest takeaway from the season in terms of trends, it could be schematic, it could be personnel. If someone said to you, what's the most noteworthy thing about the 2023 season, what would you say?
Did he say defense? Did he say the
He said defense is strike back.
Defense is strike back. I might just say offenses, we're down a little bit. And I think a lot of that was the quarterback injuries, of course. There were certain years when you go back through the NFL, I think 2017, a bunch of quarterbacks got injured, and it's like whoever's left at the end, makes a run, except the Eagles actually used their backup that year and actually made the run. But I do think there's something to the defenses inviting the run game a little bit more. The run game ticked up. The pass game ticked down. And the other trend, I would say, is Shanahan and friends. If you look at the top 3 quarterbacks in yards per attempt, it's all, a Kyle Shanahan guy and Brock Purdy or his disciples. Mike McDaniel with Tua, our friend Bobby Slowick with C.J. Stroud. So the Shanahan scheme. And sometimes I think hiring from the tree is overrated. We've seen the Belichick, tree through the years. It didn't always have success. But the Shanahans and the McVays and their tentacles that are ending up all across the NFL. I think they're the offenses that are creating explosive plays. So you're going to see more, and we already are seeing more of, the Shanahan and McVay tree getting more opportunities across the league.
It's funny, Steve, because of their schemes, I feel like Tua and Brock Purdy maybe do not get as much credit as they deserve, because when you get the ball out quickly on time to an open receiver, you almost don't get credit for that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, well, that's the scheme. He's a game manager. He's a system quarterback, because it's look. He got rid of the ball in 2 seconds. The guy was open. He threw a short pass. But talking with quarterbacks, they'll tell you that's harder than it looks to know where to go with the ball and to get it there that quickly.
It's literally the job. That's the job description, right? I think the problem with them, and the reason why there's debate on Tua and Brock Purdy, is the A/B analysis of, we've seen Jimmy Garoppolo in that system put up 8+ yards per attempt without throwing the ball down the field, and we've seen him throw screens to Deebo Samuel and just have really good results. So people are like, oh, anybody can do that. And with Tua, we saw him really struggle for 2 years. And then Mike McDaniel came in. Then Tyreek Hill came in. And you say, oh, that's the difference. That's why Tua is good now. And I think there's truth in that. There's a little truth. And, of course, Tyreek Hill is going to make your stats look better. Deebo Samuel and Ayuk and Kittle, they're going to make your stats look better. On the other hand, I'm of the mind that at any given time there's, 4, 6, 8 elite-ish type of quarterbacks, right? Guys that are truly elevating the team. And then there's a big chunk of 15 or 20 who I think probably aren't – there's not a massive difference between them. But when you look at Brock Purdy's skill set and Tua's skill set, they are a big part of what makes that offense run. I mean, Tua's anticipation throwing to spots is really incredible, and it fits what Mike McDaniel has set up there in Miami. What Brock Purdy has added above and beyond Jimmy Garoppolo, his outside of structure plays, his ability to just scramble, pick up 5 on 3rd and 5, pick up 8 on 3rd and 8. Purdy has elevated that offense. So I think all of that stuff is true. So we used to just look at the stats, right? Completion percentage, touchdowns, interceptions, yards per attempt. Are those a little bit higher than maybe Brock Purdy or Tua are as quarterbacks? Maybe, but they're still operating the systems at a very high level, and that's valuable, right? They are good fits for where they are.
Who would you say are the elite guys?
I mean, it's obviously Mahomes, and maybe he's in a different tier. Josh Allen, Joe Burrow when healthy, Lamar Jackson. I think Stafford. I was never a Stafford is elite guy, but I think this year he was close, right? This was one of his better seasons, given what
really
his situation, right? Who am I missing off the top of my head? I mean, Stroud has a chance to maybe get there, but let's see it again.
Yeah.
But there's not.
I think
there's
named
not
most
a lot.
I mean, Hurts obviously was down towards the end of the year for sure.
Herbert, I don't know if he's on the cusp.
I'm glad you brought that up. I was thinking about this, and I talked about this when the hire was made at the Super Bowl of Greg Roman. When I think of Greg Roman, I think of his time with Harbaugh in San Francisco, when Colin Kaepernick kind of took the league by storm with a lot of the design quarterback run stuff and the throws off it, the RPOs off of it.
Right.
And then Lamar Jackson, they went so heavy into it. He was the unanimous MVP.
Right.
I'm curious of the fit, because when I think of Greg Roman, I am thinking of design quarterback runs.
Yes.
Well, that's not Herbert.
It's
so
not.
It's a curious fit to me.
It is. The one other thing, and I can't remember exactly, I'm assuming Roman was there. They did kind of get Alex Smith back on track. And he was.
That's a good point.
He could scramble a little bit. He could play in the design run game, but certainly wasn't doing that the way Colin Kaepernick was. But they did have Alex Smith. In 2011, turned his career around. Early 2012, was actually playing well. And then they said, we're just going to take this to the next level, put in Kaepernick, and they did, and went to the Super Bowl. So they at least have that. But, yeah, with the criticism of Greg Roman in Baltimore was his inability to adjust, his inability to expand the passing attack. So this year it felt like the Ravens had an expanded passing attack post Greg Roman. I do wonder about that as well. And now for Herbert, I think it's 4 offensive coordinators in 5 years. There's a certain style that he plays. I think Herbert, as a guy that has a gunslinger type of arm, doesn't play a gunslinger type of game, right? He's very conservative. He's not conservative. He's very safe and careful with the ball. I just want to see Herbert throw the ball down the field more. Use the arm.
It's funny because I feel like even though Tua has had a better year and Purdy had a better year, I think I'd be surprised. Do you think any GM or coach, if they could have either Herbert or Purdy, would pick Purdy?
I don't think so. I mean, again, I think the Shanahan thing, it's not just a one-year thing. Kyle Shanahan has over a decade of making quarterbacks' final stat line look really good. Matt Schaub, all the way back to Houston, right? RG3's 2012.
And Schaub, people never wanted to give credit either.
Yeah,
people hated Matt Schaub.
And I get it. It was one of those things where you're like, you watch Matt. This is what Purdy's dealing with, right? You'd watch Matt Schaub, and you're like, hey, he's a pretty good quarterback. I'm watching the game. At the end of the year, it's like, at the time, it's like, oh, he has over 4,000 yards, and he's got a good touchdown to interception ratio. And then it's like, oh, his passer rating historically is actually ranked in the top whatever. And it's like, oh, that's not a Matt Schaub thing. That's got to be a little bit of him and a little bit of scheme. So the Shanahan system has over a decade of success of elevating quarterbacks. That's why Purdy gets a little bit of that pushback.
At what point do defenses start to, and maybe it's already happening, but start to have a better handle or a better feel or slow down these Shanahan offenses? Because usually there's an ebb and a flow, right?
Yeah.
It's been a pretty good, I don't know if that's an ebb or a flow for the Niners offense and for the Shanahan tree offense. And it still doesn't seem like anybody has that great of a feel for it other than don't let them get the explosives, try not to let them get the run after the catch, and almost, I don't want to say let them run, but them running the ball is not the worst case scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the challenge is I think Shanahan has made he's made it better. He's continued to evolve the system. Even the last time, the previous time they played in the Super Bowl in 2019, it used to be this wide zone scheme, right? Back in the 2000s, Mike Shanahan only ran wide zone, right? That's what they did. They're like, we can't practice anything else. But in 2019, they started adding gap components. They're running power and counter. They're running jet sweeps off of it. Shanahan's more of he's staying a step ahead. It's not like he just runs this system and it's awesome and he's just a step ahead, and they've done a nice job of team building, right? So it's all of this stuff, right? Debo and Ayuk and Kittle and McCaffrey. Like, how do you stop all those guys? That's a big part of why it's been successful. So, yeah, I think it's a challenge for the defense to push back because the system generally keeps one step ahead, and they've done a nice job coinciding that with team building and having good playmakers.
So I know I've asked you this before, and I think our listeners know Steve is 6'11" and played professional baseball for a long time at the minor league level. Do you ever wish you could do what you're doing for baseball? What is it about football that you like more? Kind of give me the breakdown between football and baseball. Because it's very unusual, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean.
Although, you know what? Like, what's the guy's name? Mark Shapiro? Longtime GM in Major League Baseball. Is that the guy's name?
It is a GM. Yeah. It is the GM, yeah.
He's a Princeton football guy.
Oh, yeah, so there you go.
Yeah. So there's other guys like that they have a football background, but that they get it too.
Yeah, my history there was more like once I got close to the big leagues, I used to study baseball and pitching the same way I study football. But at some point, you know how it is as a professional athlete, Ross, you can't think too much, right? You just got to go out there and execute. So I got to a point in my career where my downtime, instead of studying pitching, I was like, all right, I need to stay mentally clear pitching. I'm going to study football. That became my passion. I remember listening to your podcast back in the day. I'm in AAA, and I used to listen to you on ESPN. I was listening to you and
Matt Williamson.
And so I loved football, and I love the X's and O's. I love what we're talking about, the cat and mouse game between the offense and the defense, the team building aspects of it. I love baseball too. But, football became my passion toward the end of my baseball career because I needed to get my mind away from, trying to perform at a high level on the mound.
Steve, really, really appreciate the time. Unfortunately, not as long as I wanted to be able to chat with you. Maybe we can get you on again sometime this offseason.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, Ross.
Awesome stuff with Steve. Really enjoyed talking with him always. The other thing I really enjoy, and I told you guys this the last couple of years, I really enjoy scrolling on the Game Time app and seeing what's available in my area. There's so many concerts. I didn't know Zach Bryan is going to be at Lincoln Financial Field, but he is. And my wife loves Zach Bryan. Post Malone is coming to Hershey Park Stadium right near my house. I mean, I just go through, and that's, by the way, just looking at music. If I click on sports, you can get tickets to the Phillies for $57. I mean, it's pretty awesome. Minor league baseball is even less than that. You can get tickets to the Eagles preseason game for $23. Huge fan of the Game Time app. As much as anything else, just knowing what events are in the area and then seeing what deals you can get. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code ROSS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. So again, create an account and redeem code ROSS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Speaking of guarantees, I guarantee, well, I guess I can't guarantee that you would like Labatt Blue Light, but I can guarantee that I like Labatt Blue Light quite a bit. I'm in alternating mode. When I'm at the beach, it's usually Labatt Blue Light Lime. When I'm back at the house, it's just Labatt Blue Light, the regular, the OG, with my wife, with my family. This weekend, I'll be with some friends, which is always great. Speaking of always, enjoy it responsibly. Beer, Labatt USA, Buffalo, New York.
Tuck's Takes.
All right, Ross, the Packers, they get some big extensions done with defensive tackle Kenny Clark, and there's still one lingering. Jordan Love will not be practicing until he gets his new deal.
So Kenny Clark, by the way, absolute monster of a player, having a terrific career. Good for him. You know, Jack, if you really look at the amount of guys that play 10 years in the NFL, it's not many. You look at the amount of guys that get a third monster contract like Kenny, not very many. You're having an absolutely fantastic career if you get to this point that Kenny is at. So, first of all, good for him. As for the Jordan Love thing, now this is what I believe every guy who's in a contract situation should do. The difference, I think, is that it seems like Jordan Love's representation and the Packers sort of agreed to this, sort of agreed to the hold-in nature, right, of Jordan Love being in the meetings, being on the practice field, but not actually taking the injury risk. I think some people think you have more leverage if you stay away. I think you have more leverage if you do this because you're like there and everybody can see you, but you're not practicing and you're not losing $50,000 a day. So he's not losing $50,000 a day. So good for him. I think this is what more guys should do. However, it should be noted, clearly the Packers and Love worked this out. Whereas some of the other guys we'll talk about later either didn't try to work it out or the team is not cool with them being there but not practicing. And I guess that's a different fine. It's not holding out. I guess you'd be fining them for conduct detrimental or something.
Someone that would probably be fine if they lost $50,000 in a day. Left tackle Christian Darrisaw of the Minnesota Vikings. He got a new deal, making him the highest paid offensive lineman in NFL history.
Couple thoughts on this. I think he's 28 million, maybe, little over 28 million. Congratulations to Christian. You know, I called the first game he ever started as a true freshman at Virginia Tech. He started against Florida State in that opening Monday night game, and I was there. So I remember that distinctly because they said, yeah, this other guy's hurt, so we actually have to start this true freshman. He's pretty good, but we'll see. Well, evidently he's really good because now he's the highest paid offensive lineman in NFL history. He gives me some big-time Trent Williams vibes. You know, the 71, the sleeves, the being a bully out there. So that's awesome. And kudos to the Vikings for handling these contract situations with their best players. Justin Jefferson, Christian Darrisaw, they deserve it. They're your best players. They're some of the best players in the league. Just get it done. I will say this, though, Jack. It also makes me think about Howie Roseman and the Eagles a little bit as well. And I know that at times you guys probably think there's a little bit of a bias towards the Eagles. What it is I just follow them super closely because of the preseason games. And they got Jordan Mailata on a long-term extension for $22 million a year. And I would say he and Darrisaw are similar players. So to be able to get Mailata for $6 million less a year, that is significant for the Philadelphia Eagles.
And then we got one more big contract. The Jaguars, they award cornerback Tyson Campbell with a 4-year, $76.5 million extension with $53.4 million of that effectively guaranteed.
This is so awesome. I mean, listen, could I be jealous of how much money these guys are getting now? Yes. And do I wish I had longer arms? I was a little bit better of a player? Sure, I sure do. Yes, I do. However, I never would have been a Pro Bowl level corner. Although it's so funny when he got signed, like the way they promoted it, Jack, like whatever his agents had told Schefter or whatever, it was like highest, biggest contract for a non-Pro Bowl cornerback ever. Like if I'm Tyson Campbell, it's like, hey, agents, no. How about no? How about why are you going out of your way to make sure everybody knows I haven't been to a Pro Bowl yet? Like, anyway, kudos to him. Jaguars giving out big money this offseason to keep their core players. More and more teams, Browns, Vikings, starting to follow the Eagles' model of we want to lock up our good players for the long haul so that we get them done now rather than have to pay more later. And we don't have to deal with contract issues like these other teams do.
The Chicago Bears, they allow safety Jonathan Owens to miss 7 to 9 practices in order to watch his wife Simone Biles in the Olympics this summer.
So, on the one hand, that is awesome. Because I saw one report, 7 practices, the other 9. That's awesome. I love the quotes from Eberflus about it, about, it's important and it's a big deal. And I love that. On the other hand, and he's fighting for a backup safety job. That's a lot of practices. That's a lot of reps to give somebody else. That's a lot of opportunity to give somebody else. And so I think there's a little bit of a risk there on Jonathan's part, if I'm being honest.
And on the opposite end of the contract situations, edge rusher Haason Reddick is officially holding out from Jets camp, as well as wide receiver CeeDee Lamb in Dallas.
I don't really understand why anybody holds out anymore. I think you should pull a Jordan Love and show up, but then not practice because you're concerned about the injury risk, but at least you're there and you can't get fined. So I don't really agree with what these guys are doing. But also I've seen some, you and I know, Jack, I did a social post yesterday at Ross Tucker NFL on the Haason Reddick situation. This is just not a good situation for the Jets to be in, and it's a situation they, quite frankly, never should have been in.
One more piece of contract news. The Browns, they make an adjustment to Amari Cooper's contract, guaranteeing his previous $20 million salary and adding $5 million more, while Rams quarterback Matt Stafford, he gets the contract adjustment from the team that he was seeking.
So, this is the way to do it if you are the Browns, right? He had a great year. He's a really good player. This guaranteeing of the $20 million salary because, none of the money for this year was guaranteed. I don't understand that. It's all guaranteed as of the first game. And if he gets hurt before then, he gets all of it. So I don't really understand the whole making it guaranteed portion for this salary. Maybe I'm missing something. The adding $5 million, I think, might be incentives. The Browns basically gave him nothing. I don't really understand that one. And for Stafford, listen, Greg thinks he's the best quarterback in the NFC. Played very well last year. I get it.
And the NFL and the NFLPA, they have had substantive talks about adding an 18th game, perhaps even prior to the end of the current CBA.
So, I've seen one report where it said substantive talks. And then I saw another report where I saw a quote from Lloyd Howe, who's the new executive director of the NFLPA, saying, we had high level conversations. The thing is with anything like this, they're going to try to get more stuff in. If they're going to open up the CBA before 2031, the players are going to try to ask for things before then. So I just don't know that the NFLPA, I don't know that just because they're talking about it doesn't mean it's going to happen at all. Like, at all. Do I tend to think it will? Yes, but I hope the NFLPA is able to secure a lot in return, because this isn't like a negotiation where the CBA is open. This is like the CBA is closed. Anyway, a lot more to get to tomorrow, I'm sure, with Greg as the news keeps coming down the pike. I think we're done here.
Thanks for tuning in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Make sure to also check out Even Money, Fantasy Feast, and College Draft, all on the DraftKings Network on Samsung TV Plus, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.
Shout out myfrontpagestory.com. You guys know how I feel about it. If you need a gift for any loved one, this is the one. myfrontpagestory.com. BackOfficeScheduler.com, HumanHeadNYC.com, Sporticulture, Pizza Boy Brewing.